Good day, students, and welcome to another beautiful time with you in class. Your favorite civic teacher, Mr. Chukudi. And today we'll be looking at electoral malpractices. Electoral malpractices. All right. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define electoral malpractice as well as identify different forms of electoral malpractice, as well as explain the consequences of electoral fraud on democracy. This and many more you're going to understand in this insightful lesson we're going to have today. So let's get into it. Electoral malpractice refers to the illegal interference of the electoral process. Okay, any process that disrupts the smooth flow of election is known as malpractice, and it undermines democracy and ensures that elections are not done free and fairly. Like the picture above, where such a that guy is selling his vote for another person to buy. All right, so that is a form of electoral malpractice, and it undermines democracy. It's not democratic. All right, it undermines democracy and ensures that elections are not done free and fair as it's supposed to be in a democratic society. Now, electoral malpractice, also known as electoral fraud or voters fraud, includes illegal registration, voters intimidation, and vote manipulation. So electoral malpractice means a fraud that hinders the smooth flow of election, and it has a lot of vices like illegal registration, intimidation, and vote manipulation. All these are accused to the basic meaning of electoral malpractice. Now, one of the forms of electoral malpractice is use of fake ballot papers. Ballot papers are papers that have the logos of all political parties that have been registered by INEC. Now, some people use fake ballot papers, papers that are not given by INEC, papers that have not been produced by INEC. All right. So people this they use it to manipulate votes, and this leads to unfair outcomes and deny their people the choice of leaders. All right. So these fake ballot papers are being hoarded. All right, they are being hoarded and used for people not to have their say. All right, and it's a very bad form for elections. It doesn't go well in a democratic society. In short, it brings democracy to its barest minimum. So use of fake ballot papers, it's actually a form of electoral malpractice because it yields unfair election. It allows citizens not to actually have the dream leader of their choice at the end of any electoral process. All right, up next is underage voting. As you can see in the picture of children who has PVCs, these two kids are not yet up to 18 and they all have their PVC going out to vote. This shouldn't be done because it undermines democracy. Underage voting allows minors to vote, and it's also is common where if party has fewer legal voters, okay, especially when a party doesn't have major seats in their campaign, major people to vote for them, don't have a lot of how would I put it, doesn't have a lot of fans or a lot of fan base, a lot of electorate, all right, they use underage children to vote for them. Another form of electoral malpractice is artificial scarcity of electoral materials. Now, this happens when electoral materials are actually being provided for by INEC, but some people, because they want their own candidates to win by all means, they hoard these materials and make them scarce on the day of election. This is deliberate because it allows people that are against a party against the people's choice, allows them from getting up to that seat of leadership. So shorting the ballot papers, they also use other means to prevent supporters from voting. They make sure that people at their polling unit don't get the necessary materials needed to vote. By doing this, they make electoral materials scarce, whereas they are readily available. All right, another form of electoral malpractice is financial inducement and fake manifestos. Now, people give people money, vote for me, I'll give you 10,000 naira. Vote for me, I'll give you 100,000 naira. Now, that is financial inducement. This is bribing people with money to vote for you. Also, some political parties give fake manifestos. Most parties will promise their citizens, I will build new houses for you, I will do good roads for you, I will make sure education is free and fair, and they don't actually want to do that when they come into power. All they want to do is embezzle the funds being allocated to them. So this is another serious form of electoral malpractices. All right. Also, thuggery, intimidation, and disenfranchisement. Now, political thugs. There are people we call political thugs. These are sent by other political leaders to disrupt electoral processes in some polling units where they know that they might not be able to win a majority vote in that particular polling unit. As you can see in the picture above, you see thugs with their sticks going to disrupt electoral process. Now, voters' details are altered and disqualify them for voting. This way, they can actually scatter the the polling unit. Electoral officials will run away, and such polling units won't be able to vote. And this causes a lot of menace in our society, and this limits democratic principle in such society. Another is misinformation and ballot stuffing. False information is spread to influence election results. All right, there may be false information, that so person did not win in his polling unit, or so person has won in his polling unit, and we'll be like, this is not the person we voted for in such polling unit. Such informations actually hinders election, peaceful running of election, because when false informations are passed in polling units, it gives people it begins to people begins to worry and begins to get bothered that why is my candidate not winning? All right. And also stuffing of ballot boxes. All right. Most times it's steal ballot boxes and go and tick their representative, and they stuff it into such ballot boxes. All these are form of electoral practice that hinders the electoral process in a democratic society. Another form of electoral malpractice is misrecording and destruction of ballots. Now, this is popular in electoral processes in our beloved country, Nigeria, where votes are misrecorded, miscounted. Most times, they deliberately don't count some votes in order to make sure a particular candidate is winning. And also, ballot boxes are deliberately destroyed and altered results. This this is caused by thugs, political thugs most times. They can just get to polling units and scatter everywhere, tear the ballot boxes, and such elections will not count on the day the general counting of elections are to be done. All right, I'm going to conclude by saying electoral malpractice undermines democracy and fairness. It ensures that democracy it doesn't live up to its name, because democracy involves full citizen participation in their government. Now, electoral malpractice doesn't ensure that. Also, citizens must stand up against electoral fraud and ensure credible leadership in their country. We must stand up. And how can we stand up? By going to the press, writing articles on newspapers, speaking up, involving international bodies to come to our aid, to stand up for us and kick against every form of electoral malpractice. All right, I want you to practice the following questions. All right. Number one, define electoral malpractice and explain its impact on democracy. Two, identify and describe three major forms of electoral fraud. And three, suggest ways to prevent electoral malpractice in elections. Now, you can look into these assignments and pen them down and type the answers in the comments, and I will sure be there in order to correct you and make necessary corrections where needed. All right, thanks for having me one more time on today's class. I hope you've learned something, and hope at every point of electoral malpractice you're going to speak up. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next class. To have a lovely day.